Holy hell, ladies and gentlemen, let's talk about tanks in Overwatch 2 because they are pretty broken. Alright guys, welcome to the channel. So what we're going to do is look at the tanks, and before we do that, I think I kind of want to make a statement at the top of this video. So tanks are basically a stronger version of the same tank from Overwatch 1, but now in Overwatch 2. Now, this is because there's only one tank per team, so they've really beefed up the tanks so they can take more damage, they can do more damage, they're more independent, but this means they become super powerful. Now, it really, really matters what hero you're playing and what other tank you're playing against. If anything, the tank role is even more of a hard carry than it was during certain phases of Overwatch 1. I think some people feared this as well, that tanks would become very stressful to play because you are the only tank. And I'm here, guys, to confirm it pretty much is. You are the only tank. If you do something stupid and die, there's a very good chance your team are going to lose control, and that is not going to be good for anybody involved. Well, it'd be good for the enemy team, but not for your team. You've got no place to hide, so there's no off-tank that can bail you out. If you mess up, that's it. You just lose the fight. And if you keep messing up, yeah, you're going to get avoided. You know, it's the most high-sensitive, high-pressure role in Overwatch 2, without a doubt. It is incredibly stressful. Now, some players like this, you'll thrive off it and it'll be awesome. Other players, though, might start crumbling under the pressure. I can see a world where there's quite a lot of toxicity aimed towards tank players if they're not playing a certain tank hero, which we're going to get onto in this video, but I want to quickly touch on this because it's a viable point to make right now. Reinhardt is very weak at the moment in the game. Now, this is because he suffers from lack of movement. He suffers from lack of being able to do multiple things at once. He either shields or he does damage. You can't do both. He is strong if you get him into melee range, but that depends on having a Lucio, which is a whole other kettle of fish, and we'll get onto that in a second. But if you're playing a Reinhardt and it's being played into an Orisa, the Orisa will win. The only thing the Reinhardt can do is, well, he gets a free Earth Shatter every now and again. That's it. Everything else, he will basically get destroyed by Orisa. So in that example, the Reinhardt would have to change hero. But if it's a Reinhardt player, might not be able to play Orisa. You know, and that's where the problems start coming in with this very rock, papery, scissory design now of tank play. Because it very much is. If you haven't got, if it's a mirror matchup, then fine, there'll be ways of playing around it. But if it isn't a mirror matchup, and you're playing straight up a stronger tank, you will by default just win more games. So you've got to be flexible. But again, that means you'll be more of a focus for toxicity. So there's a lot of debate to be had around this. Anyway, let's get stuck into this video. So what has changed here? Well, the first place to start is the tank passive. Now, all tanks have got a new passive, which makes them resistant to knockback, not to stuns, but to knockback. So think Lucio boops and stuff like that. You don't fly as far, which is good. And also, when they take damage, so when they're being attacked by enemy heroes, those enemy heroes generate less ultimate charge. Now, this is also a good change because it means there's less ultimates per game now, which is good because, yes, some fights will be decided by ultimate usage, but not every, well, not every fight in the past, but you guys get what I'm saying. You're not really going to play a game now around using ultimates. You have to play in between those periods of downtime between the ultimates. So this is, you know, a very good thing for Overwatch 2. I think a good place to start here would be to look at matchups and the way tanks work against each other. So we're going to take a look at a new versus an old tank. What I mean by this is old is like a legacy hero, so a Reinhardt, a Winston, basically a tank hero that hasn't been totally reworked, because all Reinhardt has gained is some changes to his barrier. He can control his charge a little bit better, he can cancel it as well, and he gets another fire strike. And all Winston gets is the most ridiculously piss poor ability in this little sort of ranged attack, which is, I think it ranged to about 20 meters or 25 meters or so, which is basically like a ranged melee attack, and it's really terrible to use and really needs looking at. Not great for Winston. Anyway, let's move on to this. So let's look at Orisa versus Reinhardt. Good example here because we've got Orisa, totally reworked, essentially a brand new tank hero, against Reinhardt, minimal reworks, retains the same design philosophy, which again you could argue is an ancient design philosophy based around original Overwatch. I always say this, but look at the choke points on King's Row or some of the older maps, Dorado, for example, even Eichenwald. They're basically designed so Reinhardt can put his barrier in the choke exactly perfectly, because that's what the game was about. Playing around chokes, playing around barriers. Overwatch 2 isn't, though. Overwatch 2 is about free-flowing movement, deathmatchy style, all kinds of stuff. So Reinhardt, he suffers unless he gets into melee range, which, like I said, is difficult, very difficult, without a Lucio. So what can Orisa do to Reinhardt? Well, she's got 3 skills that all basically outplay Rein and are very easy to use against him. So if she fortifies, well, Reinhardt can't do anything to her because she's just got more health. And, well, he can't charge her, so whatever. And also, she does a ton of damage at point-blank range. The way a weapon works, it does more damage the closer you are to it. So she's basically firing into you while she's super buffed. You can't do enough damage to kill her, but she will kill you. That's not great. Also, she's got Spear Spin, which will just knock Reinhardt all over the place. Also, Elite Fire Strike as well. But it will just knock him all over the place. And also, she can throw a javelin into him or a spear straight into his head, and this will interrupt him. So the javelin kind of works like a mini sleep. So you throw it, and it sort of interrupts all abilities instantly. You know, it's not a long stun or anything like that, but it will stop charge. So if Reinhardt's charging and you spear him, he hits the ground, and then you can just carry on doing damage to him. So you completely outplay him with all 3 of your abilities there, which is super rough on Reinhardt. And remember, this can all be done while you're firing, so you're doing damage with your primary weapon. So then you look at Reinhardt, and you go, okay, well, what's his strength in this matchup? Well, he's got Earth Shatter, which will be free, because there is no way to block the Earth Shatter unless Orisa blocks it with a body with Fortify on, which you'd think Reinhardt could get around that, because it's super easy to do that. But that's it. There's no other benefit, really, to... or he has no more advantages. He can't really look for an opportunity to bully the Orisa because she's got all these tools that deal with him so effectively. So what about this thing I was banging on about, his melee damage if you get him into close range? Yeah, he is good then. If you get him into close range, it's difficult to stop Reinhardt because remember, he's resistant to knockbacks and there's less stuns in the game. So this means you're not going to get McCree, or sorry, Cassidy flashbanging him. You're just going to get him running around smashing your face in with a hammer, which is going to be super bad for you, right? But how do you get him there? This is the difficulty, because as he's moving towards the fight, he's getting attacked by everybody. There's loads of range damage coming in. It's just the Orisa's destroying him. It's like, oh my god. But if you've got a Lucio, you can speed him in. But then the whole thing becomes, do you want to take a Lucio just to pocket the Reinhardt? Is that optimal? Probably not. So it's making Reinhardt dependent on other heroes, which I think is something Overwatch 2's design philosophy is trying to get away from, especially when you look at more modern heroes like Sigma. He can do this damage and protect. So his barrier can be out, he can do damage at the same time. Orisa can definitely do that. Doomfist can definitely do that. So Reinhardt it's either or. It's damage or defense, and it just doesn't work in this game. Unless, of course, you want to pocket him. But why would you do that when you could just pick Orisa? Let's look at 5v5, because it's a brave new world with 5v5. This is there to make the game more watchable, but also make the game cleaner. Make it more simplistic to understand. Make it more... well, I think clean really is the best way to describe this, because it's still Overwatch. We know when we watch the gameplay, we see all the abilities going off. We know what the abilities are. Yeah, it can look flashy at times. Yeah, this is Overwatch. It does need to retain some of that. It can't be totally bland. But what this means is that 5v5, you've got 1 tank per team, and that means it's even more rock, paper, scissory than Overwatch, because you're looking at pretty much like, if you've got the Rock, and the Rock is Reinhardt, and the enemy team have got, let's say the enemy team have also got a Rock, and that's also Reinhardt. Well, okay, in that case, you're going to be looking for ways to outplay each other. There definitely will be a Rein diff in that case. If you can mind game, Earth shatters out the enemy Reinhardt, he shatters your barrier, then you take him out, or maybe you're better at charging than him. Cool, you know, that's great, you've outplayed him. But in this Overwatch, I would just go, okay, I'll just play Orisa into this Reinhardt, because this guy's a Reinhardt main. I mean, hell, if you were playing at the highest levels of Overwatch on the ladder, maybe you get a bunch of streamers in your game, you've got like Reinhardt streamers or whatever, you'd be like, well, I'm just going to play Orisa because I don't think they can really do anything else, unless they can play other heroes, which to be fair, they probably can if they're high-level players. But you get what I'm saying, guys. It is very much, yes, I can beat you, or no, I can't. You look at, let's look at Doomfist or Wrecking Ball and compare them to Winston. Winston can't kill you. Doomfist and Wrecking Ball can kill you. It's very basic. So what this means is, if Doomfist goes into your back line, he can kill someone. If Winston goes into your back line, he might kill someone, but it's going to be a bit risky, and he might get killed himself, and he needs that dive support. Doomfist and Wrecking Ball can operate on their own, and I think a lot of this comes from the way those heroes functioned in Overwatch 1. Doomfist and Wrecking Ball play the same. The Doomfist change is actually genius. What they've done to Doomfist, I think, is incredibly good, because it makes him play the same way. So you can play him like a DPS hero, but he's a tank. It's really good what they've done with him. But you put Reinhardt into this. Well, Winston is the example we got. I'm just going in on Reinhardt. But you put Winston into this, and you're like, well, why would I play this Winston who is nowhere near as mobile as these other heroes, doesn't do as much damage as these other heroes? He's suffering, right? You just wouldn't play him. Anyway, let me just get back on track a second, because I did kind of go off on a bit of a rant there. But, you know, I do get quite emotional in these videos. Right then, let's talk about the dynamic between being able to bully the other tank. Now, this is key. This is absolutely key. Because if you bully the other tank, you create space. Therefore, you can create control of the game area that you're in, whatever point of the map that may be, which is a massive bonus to your team because your DPS can do stuff, your supports are going to feel safer, all of that stuff. It's really good. Now, Zarya has got 2 bubbles. This makes it very hard to find that window of bully opportunity. Now, there's a bunch of other tanks we could all look at for this. Sigma is another example. When he uses suck and then, well, it ends, you know, oh, yes, he's used his suck ability, so I can pressure him. Yeah, he's probably still got barrier. Or if he throws the rock at you and misses, oh, well, he's used his rock. The thing with Zarya is, in the past, you'd be like, oh, he just bubbled herself. Now I'm going to go on her and do damage. But wait, she can bubble herself again here. So it's much more difficult to find that gap, to find where you can bully her and push her around. Whereas Reinhardt, if you take his shield down, you know you can bully him. See what I'm saying? Or if Winston jumps in and drops his dome and you just destroy his shield, well, Winston is like, he's just waiting for cooldown to get out of there to jump out, so you can literally hammer him. So it's very easy to read those older tanks.
No, they have a pro player. They're good.
Orisa is another example of a hero having a literal myriad of abilities that can just react to aggression. And both Zarya and Orisa output high damage and are fairly easy for supports to keep alive. Orisa will be doing damage at range, not at massive range. She generally does more damage at point blank range and close range. But she's safer. She's not in the enemy's back line. It's easier for supports to keep her alive. I know this because I've played loads of supports. It's easier to heal an Orisa with Ana than it would be a Doomfist, right? Simply because the Doomfist is rolling, jumping everywhere. Ball as well is rolling everywhere. You know, they're harder to heal. Maybe you take a different support in that case. But you just get a lot more bang for your buck when you're rolling these. Can we call them hybrid tanks? I don't even know. These tanks that can do damage and also survive. And then added bonus if they've got mobility as well. They just become incredibly valuable. And if players play them well, they just dominate the game. I know this is alpha, which I'm referencing here, but the Orisa was very easy to end up with pretty much 4 gold medals. And it's not like you're playing against unknown players. You're playing against Overwatch League players, you're playing against top-level streamers, top-level content creators. Yes, there's devs from Overwatch and things like that were involved, but it does really show you how powerful that Orisa is. But I think it's good, though. Like, don't be under any illusion here, guys. I'm not saying Orisa is bad. What they've done to Orisa, again, is very good. All of the reworks that are in Overwatch 2 are fantastic. Bastion, Orisa, Sombra, yeah, okay, maybe not all of them. But you get what I'm saying. Like, Doomfist, again, incredible, you know, amazing rework. They work well. So Blizzard have definitely got that right. It's just when I'm trying to look at it from, like, a holistic point of view, I'm looking at the other tanks in the roster, and I've played this, and I've experienced it myself, and it's not fun to get destroyed when you're playing Reinhardt or Winston. But maybe that's the point of it. Maybe that's the way that this game is being played. This isn't Overwatch anymore. The days of thinking, you know what, we've got this main tank and we've got an off tank, and maybe we set up with the main tank or we wait for the tank to push, are gone. Maybe you could argue Reinhardt has had his day. You know, maybe he does need to be retired or completely, totally reworked in some sort of insane way where he can now decide to do massive damage or go offensive at maybe the cost of sort of his defensive abilities. So I think all the tanks can bully every other tank, with the exception of Reinhardt. He can only really bully in a matchup, a mirror matchup, if he manages to pull, you know, like the fabled Rein diff, and then can totally outplay them with, like, I don't know, better charges or baiting out Shatter and all that stuff. We all know, like, it's awesome when a Reinhardt outplays a Reinhardt. The thing is, though, with mobile tanks, they very rarely tend to go 1v1, so they've got more space to play. But Rein and Orisa are very much frontline tanks. They will be on the front line. They will be pushing forward. And right now, Rein is so woefully under-equipped to deal with Orisa, Zarya, Doom, Ball, Sigma. It is kind of sad. He's suffering from being, you know, an old legacy hero. To make him more viable, like I kind of just said, he does sort of need some way of converting his tanky nature into more of like a brawler styles. Maybe with a bit more mobility so he can fit into this new Overwatch 2 world. But yeah, like I can't really see that happening without his barrier being looked at. And maybe they want to keep Reinhardt's barrier because it is integral to the fantasy of the hero. He is the big armored knight with a big barrier. That's what Reinhardt is. So it's a brave new world out there, guys, tanking in Overwatch 2. It is very... You get a lot of reward. If you make a good play, you get a ton of reward. But I think it's important to realize, yes, it's early days, and yes, a lot of things could change. But just having one tank means there is a heavy focus on that tank to perform. And if that tank goes MIA, then you really feel it. But also, the tank dictates the way your team is going to play. It is very jarring if you go into a game and your only tank is D.Va or Zarya or Hog. You're like, what? These are not tanks, or Ball or Doomfist. You're like, what is this? Like, I'm not used to this. If they end up as your tanks, a lot of the game feels like you don't have a tank. It feels like your tank is off doing what it likes, and the rest of the team is left to fend for themselves. If you get a Reinhardt, you can think, okay, it kind of feels a bit better here now. We feel like we're together as a team, as a unit again. Roadhog, I'd say, is fairly decent as well at this. Like, it does feel like, you know, Roadhog tends to play with the team. Of course, Roadhog can go off flanking and try and get crazy hooks. And in fact, I've not even spoken about Roadhog against Orisa, because Orisa can counter loads of things Roadhog can do. She can counter his hook with spear spin. She can just fortify, and so hook doesn't work. But Roadhog can be fairly good against Orisa if you know she's used the cooldowns, and you can, like, sort of bully her out of position and do a lot of damage at point blank range, obviously, with Roadhog's shotgun. But yeah, it is a brave new world. It is a world in which you have to be aware that you will not have tanks protecting you. And I think that's kind of the moral of the story right now. Remember, it is early days and these things could change. But the way the overwhelming thought or feelings I've had from playing the alpha, it's straight up like, yes, we either have a frontline tank that is doing DPS and we need to try and keep alive, or we've got a dive tank that's somewhere in the back. That's it. Or we've got a Roadhog flanking. It's not like we're playing together with a tank and the tank's going to try and protect the backline. It's like, oh no. It's almost like the backline have to just protect themselves now. And maybe that's the way Overwatch 2 is meant to be. I don't know. And maybe things will change. Maybe they'll become metas where the tanks do just camp the backline and the DPS push the payloads or whatever. Who knows? It is early days. But I hope this video is giving you guys a good sort of overview of the way tanking works in 5v5. And tanks are pretty broken in the sense that they have so much power tied up in them. Alright guys, thank you for watching the video. Remember, you can follow me on everything which is at Stylosa. On TikTok, I am at StylosaUL, and everything else, I'm just at Stylosa. Go and follow me on Twitter, which would be wonderful. And if you did like the video, guys, then do consider subscribing to the channel, like the video, and do leave your comment below, because it will mean a lot to me, and I am reading all of the comments on these new Overwatch 2 videos, because it is so awesome to finally have new content to talk about. Alright guys, thank you very much, and I'll catch you on the next one. Toodaloo.